DSLR Photography Top 5 Camera Components. If you want to learn how your DSLR camera is similar to or different from other cameras, make sure to watch the first presentation in this series entitled Camera Terms. Of the top 5 components, these are the top 3: the image sensor, the shutter, and the aperture. The last 2 include the lens and the light meter. If we look at the back of this digital camera, we will see that the top 3 settings are related to our top 3 components. The image sensor setting is related to ISO. This has to do with light sensitivity. This camera is set to 400, which is an average setting. Lower numbers, like 100, are less sensitive to light, and higher numbers are more sensitive to light. The shutter speed, related to the shutter component, is represented as a fraction of a second. In this example, the 1/125 means that the shutter speed is 1/125th of a second. This too is an average setting. Shutter speeds can be as short as a 4,000th of a second or can take 30 to 60 full seconds in very low light situations. The aperture is associated with the f number. The f number, or f-stop, relates to the size of the aperture opening. This setting of 5.6 is also average. Aperture numbers are inverses, although they are not always shown as an inverse. So a large aperture opening would be 1/1.4, normally just shown as 1.4, and a small aperture opening would be 1/22, or often just shown as f/22. Although I introduce the light meter in this presentation, and it is considered one of the top 5, it's a complicated subject, and we will not go into that until a later lesson. The light meter is only used in concert with exposure compensation and in manual mode, and we will look at that, as I said, we'll look at that later. You'll notice that there is no focal length indicator for our last top 5 camera component, the lens. Some cameras will show this depending on the model. If your readout, like this one, does not have the focal length displayed, just turn your camera around and look at the lens. This is a common zoom lens configuration that is bundled with many Canon cameras. Here we see that this lens is an 18 to 55 millimeter zoom, and it can be set anywhere between 18 and 55 millimeters. You will find these top 5 settings emphasized in image editing programs as well. These screenshots are from Aperture, Apple's image editing program. On the top we see an info panel, and on the bottom picture we see the related photo. Both prominently show the top 5: ISO, shutter speed, aperture, the EV or exposure value, and the lens focal length. In our next lesson we will learn more about the top 3: ISO, shutter speed, and aperture. Lenses and exposure compensation, and shooting in aperture and shutter priority and manual modes will be addressed in following presentations.